name is Marleen Dieleman. I am a professor of family business at IMD Business School. I am here in Singapore at Tolaram, and with me are Mr. Mohan Vaswani, the chairman, and Mr. Sajen Aswani, CEO of Toloram. Welcome. We are going to talk today about Tolaram's history, your values, the governance and structure, and building a long-lasting legacy. I would like to start with you, Mr. Mohan. Your family is from a province called Sindh, and you all left during the partition of India. And your family ended up in Indonesia because your seniors already had a business there, and they were textile merchants at the time. And your father created a very small shop in Malang, which is in East Java. Can you tell us when you started to work in that small business? What was it like?
I was 10 years. My sister was 12 plus. So we both used to work in this small shop.
Can you describe how the shop looked like at the time?
Oh, it was just maybe about this room. 4 by 4.
Well, that's a very, very big difference with Toloram today, because that very small shop in Malang would eventually evolve into a global empire thanks to your leadership and other family members with over 20,000 employees. In fact, in the 1970s, your family moved to Singapore, and thereafter, you and your family members explored almost the entire world, and you went to Africa, US, UK, and other places. Maybe I could ask Mr. Sajen, could you give a brief overview of Toloram today?
Today we are in 3 principal geographies: in Africa, in Asia, and in Europe, continentally. In Africa, we have a packaged food industry business, quite a large one. We have an infrastructure business in Nigeria, and in Europe, in Estonia, we have a large paper mill, and in Indonesia, we have a Bank Amar. So these are the 3 principal activities in 3 principal geographies that we have.
Yes, and although your family members are all located here in Singapore now, they are traveling very extensively to all these locations.
So we never actually leave the countries we do business with. We kind of travel back and forth. And it happened to be the case when we moved to Singapore. Wherever we moved, we kind of made sure that we had our presence in some form or the other in the countries.
Let me focus a little bit more on your values, because that's one of the things that strike outsiders when they do business with Tolaram. And I would like to explore a little bit what drives you and makes you so successful. Chairman, Mr. Mohan, how was this very small business able to succeed in all these different places and cultures? Can you describe what makes Tolaram so special in your view?
My view is because the family value was always down to earth. That was the main reason. Initially, we have a lot of turbulence, a lot of ups and downs. Or last from 48 to 57, a lot of turbulence. My dad has a lot of turbulence. Somehow he tried to help others, but it turns out to be different. But nevertheless, he was still helping others. Mm-hmm. So in 1957, when my dad one day called me, he says, "Now you are responsible to run the business." So I was 19 years old.
19 years old, okay.
That's how we start humble business again with some of my colleagues who helped me to grow this business. Mm. But in that journey, a lot of people came forward to help us as well. So that was a grace and helping hand, how we could move from where we were and until where we are now.
But you traveled to Africa and other places at that time. Why did you do that?
Yeah, my dad always actually have a vision that Toloram will be across the world. Mm-hmm. But I couldn't believe that, because even in Indonesia alone, we were very busy, to be honest. I used to leave home at 6 o'clock and come back at about 8 from Malang to Surabaya. So when he used to tell us, you will be across the world, and I used to have doubt. I say, I have no time to even spend time with family. But somehow it happened. And he used to push us to move to Singapore. The reason behind that was because of the education of children. That means his grandchildren. That's why we moved to Singapore.
Let me ask Mr. Sajen. It's often argued for family businesses that on average they perform better than other types of business. And one of the reasons that we think is behind that premium, performance premium, is that many families have their special values. And by putting those values into the business, it creates a competitive advantage. And your family is known for its strong values of trust, respect, commitment, courage, and humility. Can you explain something about these values? When did you start articulating those values?
I mean, we kind of codified it about 15 years ago, but those values were lived even before us, right? Even my grandfather had, as we were growing up, talked to us about some of these values, and he, for example, said that trust is very elementary in any business, right? If you lose trust, you kind of don't actually have a reason to be in business. So those values carried forward. All we did in our generation was we put them into proper kind of language and format, and so that we could transmit it even better. Because by now, or by then, when we were codifying it, the number of people in the company had grown to a large number, and you couldn't speak to them individually about those values. So you try to find another way of communicating it. And that's what we did back in 2014, I think.
And other than communicating those values to the many employees that Toloram has around the world, are there any other ways that you ensure that the values are also lived by everyone?
Yes, so we definitely reward on the basis of people who live by values. Right? We kind of recruit. If we see a value match, we reward on our human development systems are centered around the values. We almost can say that it's a meritocracy based on values. That's how we think about our values, right? That we exercise very great care in the selection and in the promotion and the reward of individuals who live by the values.
A meritocracy based on values. I find that very, very interesting. Why is that so important to you? What does it do for you?
It's more enduring, because business performances change. They go up, they go down. But I think that living by your values and having the kind of system that is value driven ensures a certain amount of consistency.
Okay, and how do you ensure that the values also go to the next generations?
We can't ensure it. We can only, give it our best effort and see that it, we kind of try and walk the talk. We try and share our philosophy with the next generation, and then if they buy it, they buy it. If they don't, well.
Chairman, one of your values is humility. Now, I've known you for a while, and I have experienced myself that you are one of the most humble people that I have met in my life. And in fact, everyone else agrees with me. But for certain audiences, especially maybe Western audiences, humility sounds a little bit strange, because when we think about entrepreneurs, we think about people that just have a lot of courage and assertiveness, and maybe they even fake it until they make it, right? But your idea of humility is important and a little different. Can you talk a little bit about why is humility important, and was there maybe a moment when you learned how important it was?
I think it's very important. Number one, we learned that when we were young. we were seeing our families, my uncles, my dad, my mom, my granddad from my mom's side, they were very, very down to earth. So we were brought up in that environment.
Some of those values, commitment and courage, for example, and respect, in the businesses, in the geographies that we do business, they're kind of very important because they, in a way, help us integrate in the societies. People trust us and people believe that we are here to stay, and we are committed to the businesses, and we have, bold thinking to overcome challenges. So those values are crucial. Right? Because whenever we have a situation, we turn to those values to try and address how would these values come to the fore in certain circumstances, and then often they provide the answers to those same challenges that we have.
Do you have an example that you can share?
Oh yeah, plenty. For example, Estonia, for example, when we first went there, we acquired some businesses that were sold by the state-owned enterprises under the privatization scheme. Now, many people were skeptical that we could turn these businesses around and run them. But it took a long time, but we stayed the course. We endured a lot of difficult time. And at the end of it, the goodwill and the trust that we have in that country is very, very significant. People believed Tolaram brand as a brand that they could rely on. So that would be a good one example.
I want to focus on a slightly different topic, but equally important, which is a topic of governance. Sometime in 2016, around that time, your family was quite worried about the future of the business. In particular, you were not sure whether your next generations were interested in running the different businesses. And because of that, you decided to create a constitution, a family council, and also a family office. Mr. Sajen, can you share that journey with us? Was it easy, and how long did it take, and what was the result of that process?
Yeah, so it was surprisingly easy, simply because everybody in the family sort of ownership structure also equally saw the need for it. Nobody kind of disagreed that there was a need for it. The complexity was around agreeing on a set of rules. And that didn't take very long either. And everybody bought into the idea of institutionalizing the family business so that we didn't leave too much to argument and chance. So we had a structure that enabled people to resolve disagreements and play by the same set of rules. So I would say that we did that in 2015 because we saw many businesses, family businesses around us suffer a different fate. And it's been about 10 years now, it's worked well, and I hope it continues to do well, that we can rely on those structures going forward for the next generations. Once we decided that we needed something, putting up the structures were quite relatively easy because the kind of field of family office structures were well established by then. I think the little challenge we had was agreeing on the same set of rules for everybody. Because by now we were already 3 branches of the family and 2 generations in the business. So 7 individuals got together for a couple of days and deliberated, and over a period of a couple of months we landed on something that there was a consensus around it. So I would say that we had a very relatively easy path to coming to an agreement.
One of the things that happened too when you talked about your structure and your rules was that you professionalized all the businesses. Can you talk a little bit about that? And also, what changed for the family members? How did their roles change?
So the professionalization happened a long time ago. I think that what we kind of agreed at this point of time was that sort of separation of responsibilities between the professional managers and the stewards of the business, the owners. We kind of adopted a principle that separating the player from the referee. So we then put down the rules in such a way we couldn't referee ourselves. So that was the kind of concept that we worked on. I think the basic thing that we tried to get everybody to see was that if we were players, we would argue all the time and fight all the time about strategy, about thinking and governance and about management. But if we were all on the same side, on the side of the coach and the referee, then the expectations were aligned.
Yeah. Very nice way of putting it. Thank you. There was another element of that restructuring, and Mr. Mohan, at your initiative, there was a new foundation created, the Tolaram Foundation, and that foundation became quite a big beneficiary to the trust. Can you tell us why that happened? Was that something you came up with at the time?
In a year, my uncle, my dad, my mom, they will all go to the different institutions, old homes, schools, and make sure that all the kids, like my age and then my cousins, they were all party to that. So this was created by them, and then we know that everything we have to share as well. So from that time, when I was still young, about 25, 30, I already had in my mind that whoever becomes the ultimately shareholders, I want to put 30%. That was my intention originally to the foundation. But when we restructured it, it just was the right timing, and they say, okay, let us do it.
Wonderful. I understand that when you were in that small shop in Malang, you would already create goodie bags for the children with educational, pencils and paper.
Yeah.
So it's almost like you're still doing the same, but on a much larger scale. That leads into my questions about the legacy. You have more than 75 years of legacy now. How does your legacy matter for your business today? Do you think that having a strong legacy and a long legacy is important?
I think the idea was, Marleen, to answer your question in terms of legacy, right, that we wouldn't implode. So the structures were put together so that to at least give us an even chance of survival and longevity. But more important, as we evolve, from being a value-based family business that helps us to be cohesive, we're now already doing a kind of piece on purpose for the business and the family business. So it wouldn't just be for the sake of profit, but it would have a bigger kind of end. So the legacy for us, I think, as we go forward, and for my kids and my brother's kids and my cousin's kids, is to try and articulate a purpose for the organization so that everybody can abide by it and agree on.
Excellent. Does that also mean that your legacy changes over time?
I would say it gets better, it evolves, it hasn't changed. I think the basic purpose of our business and family business is always to provide for people around us, whether it's family or non-family or communities or societies. But we'd like to think about whether we could do more than that.
For instance?
For example, the environment. We're applying ourselves now to make sure that we don't bring harm to the environment. To the extent we can, we're working very hard on a sustainability agenda.
Okay, that's excellent. But now I'm thinking about the other thing. Could your legacy also hold you back? Because you have such a long history. Sometimes people feel suffocated by the past, the glorious past of the family business.
I'd like to believe that the next generation has courage as well, like we did, right? I think in their DNA is an entrepreneurial DNA, and I would like to believe that they will take it even further.
Do you have examples, sparks that you see?
Well, certainly, my two nephews and my daughter are very passionate about the Tolaram business, and they are very committed to making it work for the future. So I do see examples.
One of the things about your family is I've interacted with you for many years, and when I invite one of you, 8 people come, usually. You are always moving together and drawing in other people. So it's not a single person story in this family. In fact, I'm talking to two of you, but I could have easily be talking to many more. It's a multi-person success story, right? So I think that, what does that say about Tolaram's approach to building a legacy? How is that different in your family?
The belief that we have as a family and as a business is that the success and the failures of our daily lives doesn't hinge on an individual. It hinges on many things coming together. And that confluence is important. Some people call it luck, some people call it serendipity, but I kind of use the word confluence to say many things have to happen together for a certain outcome.
So one of the really important things when we think about legacy building for families, which is a very important topic, is the idea of storytelling. And in your family, storytelling is very important. It plays an important role. Can you maybe share a story that is one of those important stories that is being shared in your family?
When I was young, for example, the family, my dad, my uncles, they used to meet at least 2-3 times a month. And they used to always talk about family values, what to do, what not to do. And we were still very young. So this created a lot of influence on us when we were young.
So philosophical discussion.
Yes. Even Sajen, when he was still young, when he used to come from Malaysia back to Indonesia, he used to sit also around us to listen what they are talking about.
And then when you were younger, did you also experience storytelling in your family?
I was not a storyteller, I was a listener.
Happened? Were you listening at the door?
No, not at the door, but we were not at that time. You can't go and sit in the same table. The culture was that. So we used to sit about 2.5 meters away from that. And they were talking, they will have a small whiskey and small food. They will talk and talk until midnight.
And that's how the stories got told in the family. Mr. Sajen, for your next generations, I understand you have not only children, but you're also a grandfather already. How do you transmit the important stories of the family legacy to the next generations?
Well, for a start, we kind of collaborated, the 3 generations collaborated in writing a book. And they were all part of the project, so that made it easy because the stories are now in print. So the kids have a very clear understanding of their heritage and where they came from and how they got to be here. So they appreciate that the lives that they have is a result of multi-generational effort. And so I think that understanding philosophically they have. And the stories that are in the book about instances, in countries, episodes, businesses, is broadly captured, so they have a sense of that.
Yeah. Writing a book is a great way of capturing the stories. And not only that, one of the next generations also created an animated movie. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Do you remember that? Yes. So my niece, my youngest brother's daughter, Prashanti, we tasked her to do a project of trying to animate the journey. And she did exactly that. And it was a very kind of touching short video, animated.
Yeah. So multimedia stories, right? Very good. We've already almost come at the end of this interview, but I would like to ask you one more question, which is that if you were to give advice to other families, something that is important that you have learned on this journey, what would that advice be?
To ask for the advice, we always advise them that please structure it properly so there is not going to be having a problem in the future.
Okay.
And different people, different level comes to Sajen more than to me because he's younger. So we continuously give a right advice to them to have a proper structure.
No, I think there's no problem that cannot be solved. The universe is full of examples of how these problems are solved. Family businesses can be complex, but somebody somewhere can offer a lesson or an idea that can provide a solution. So the question is, how extensively do you search for these kind of network and conversations and forums to have these learning opportunities? So we were lucky that we had that forum.
So search for answers by talking to other families.
As many as possible.
Yes, as many as possible. Find the right forums and think about the structure and the governance of the family business. I'd like to thank you for your time. It's been a wonderful talking to you, and thank you.
Right.